Hello world from Oktopost headquarters. This is Radically Transparent, Oktopost's original podcast show on B2B marketing now. I'm Jennifer Gutman, Director of Social Strategy, and in most episodes of this podcast, we'll feature B2B marketing leaders who will share their radically transparent truths behind being a modern-day marketer and what it takes to grow ideas, take risks, and impact change. Joining me on this episode of Radically Transparent is Kathryn Sharfman, Chief Platform Officer and CMO of Sun Exchange, and most recently named on the Forbes CMO Next list for 2021. Kath, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Jen. Nice introduction. I'm very happy to be here.
We're really excited to have you. We had actually first seen your name on that Forbes list, and I was personally fangirling over it because I think taking a look at your LinkedIn profile and seeing all of the interesting things you are up to, both professionally and personally on LinkedIn, had me inspired. So I'm really excited to have you on the show, and I promise I'll throw you an easy one to get started. So are you ready to get radically transparent with me?
Absolutely.
Fantastic. So I was hoping that you could start us off by giving us a brief look into your professional journey and how you found yourself as CMO. And actually, it's the first time I'm hearing of this term, Chief Platform Officer at Sun Exchange. So if you could even dive into a little bit about what that means, that would be fantastic.
Sure. That's a bit of a theme, actually. New roles that never existed before. So the boring bit was that I studied law, so I didn't study marketing. I worked for in-house legal counsel. It's terribly formal. Found my way into project management. So I was project managing lawyers across Europe on really interesting projects that I had no involvement in. So I realized that I needed to move away from that. And I saw this thing called technology happening. It was very interesting. And I got involved back in the day, like in the 90s now, in Y2K. So, everything was going to implode because we hadn't got our dates. So we hadn't thought about our software development correctly. And then I got into IT and I was working in banking and very quickly started watching this thing from the side called digital marketing and thought, maybe it'll catch on, maybe it won't, maybe it's a passing fad. But that looks really interesting. And I like new things. I like understanding, what the opportunities are around new things. So I joined a small agency with a very diverse client base. It was very early days where you still downloaded log files to do analytics at 3 a.m. because the report was due to the client, and you're still waiting like in the salt mines trying to get the report to load. There's no real-time analytics. Did a bit of everything, really enjoyed the digital space, survived the dot-com bubble. And then I wanted to spread my wings into a bigger agency. So I joined a WPP agency and I worked on some really fascinating clients with really different business challenges from HSBC through to MI5. Mm-hmm. So the government portfolio, was good at keeping secrets.
So fun fact, I actually have a background, just opening my window here, that's the noise you're going to hear, but I actually have my master's degree in counterterrorism and homeland security. That's interesting to me.
Freaky, but fascinating. So I had really great meetings. So, talking about sort of B2B business, as well as working on our clients' customers, I had fascinating, I worked for the royal family as well. So I had meetings in Buckingham Palace, which was wonderful.
Can I have your life? I mean, that seems incredible.
It was quite surreal. But then also HSBC working on big retail banks, international audiences again. Very interesting. I had a little spread at a different networked agency, and then I ended up moving to South Africa. I was actually born in South Africa. I still have family here, extended family here. And I learned very quickly that across Africa, emerging markets had fascinating kind of leapfrog technology and innovation opportunities, mobile first for many kind of organizations and customers. So really fantastic learning. I love learning. I joined a high profile digital agency, very involved in educating people about the digital marketing space, became a board director and really clients that you could look at all angles of marketing for and understanding all kinds of business problems. My background was, I suppose, where I specialized was in client service. And I became the chief relationship officer. So it was also a very new role in an agency world, designed around a business problem, which was that the MDs across our business, we had 3 offices at that point. They were struggling to keep connected to their own clients, where they were rapid, like, firefighting and growing and scaling. So what we offered those clients was a kind of the inspiration and that kind of old school agency engagement. We used to run workshops, and we did, we did some scenario planning and stuff that they were so focused on, building their business, they didn't get to do that. And what I would do is give our clients headspace. It was wonderful. So, for example, for a very large conglomerate, we entertained a scenario planning session for a big international competitor coming to the shores of South Africa.
Okay.
And what would that mean? And, it was so far into the future as a possibility. We just, they were all like, wow, this is, and it happened. We were able to do that kind of thing. Then I became the MD of a boutique advertising agency. So again, spreading my wings into more integrated marketing, doing a larger scale TV production type stuff, or TV ads and things. We were a small award, punching above our weight in terms of winning awards. We were purchased by WPP, so we became part of the network. And I'm nearly there. I've worked in this space for a long time, so it's like 21 years now.
Well, it's fascinating as you're sharing your experience, as you're talking about, and what I'm thinking, what's going through my head is how much technology has changed over such a short time. Yeah. That's what's going through my head as you're telling your story, and it's fascinating. So please,
absolutely,
that's all. It's going. I'm like, wow.
Yeah.
The amount of time to adapt.
And it's always changed. And so, things like the pandemic and the shift that's created hasn't really changed marketing at all. You're still dealing with shifting fans and changing perceptions and behavior, like, all the time. And I'm very grateful that I have skills that better equipped me for such a major shift. But we have these shifts that, sometimes they've taken longer to take effect. But yeah, technology shifts for sure. And things like doing social media engagement before Facebook.
Right.
Just think about that. Think about that.
Well, I laugh because for me, so you definitely are a bit more seasoned in the marketing field than I am, but I'm not too far behind in terms of some of the things you're saying. And with that said, when I was in college, there was no social media. So to even think that I've grown my career in a field I didn't study, that didn't exist, is constantly going through my mind.
Exactly. And it's new stuff all the time. So if you're like learning, it's definitely the right place to be. So I finally made the move in-house. I think it was an itch to scratch to see what it was like from that perspective. And I moved to Tencent, which was no small organization. I had no idea really when I joined that they were at that time bigger than Facebook, because they're just like this. Nobody was really talking about the Chinese giants at that point.
No.
It happened very fast. I led the marketing charge across Africa as kind of an innovation hub, understanding how those products might work in emerging markets. Fascinating and very app focused. So again, learning a whole new thing around streaming platforms and streaming music and social media apps. Actually went up against TikTok in the very early days.
Really?
So fascinating space. And then they merged with Musical.ly, and everything else was dead in the water. You had like this great East-West kind of combination. It was a fascinating world to observe and be involved in. And then I was asked to join the CMO Council, which is actually a really great network. It's something like 16,000 marketing professionals across the world connected around insights and research and just generally great knowledge sharing. And they introduced me to Sun Exchange, where I am now. And it was a year ago. It was the start of the pandemic. I don't think we really had realized what was going on in South Africa. Mm-hmm. And I started off consulting all remotely. And I very quickly fell in love with the business and all its dimensions, like from the people to the brand to the business model and the community amazing. And we saw, and I joined as a kind of consulting CMO, mm-hmm. and we very quickly saw that this was a platform that needed nurturing, and that everything happened on the platform. whether it was the projects that we put onto the exchange. And I should maybe explain a little bit about what Sun Exchange is.
I mean, just listening to you, I'm completely drawn in. I mean, it's a fascinating journey. But let's take a step back and maybe can you explain what is Sun Exchange and what's the value that it brings to your customers? And I think that will help us feel the same enthusiasm that you feel about Sun Exchange.
You'll get an understanding of maybe what the platform is all about. So Sun Exchange is a platform powered by its community around the world, where anybody anywhere in the world can buy solar cells. And then once they've bought them, they can earn an income from the power that they generate. And what we do is facilitate that leasing. So you could be a school or a business or some other organization. Wow. You're sitting in an emerging market. You don't necessarily have access to creating your own solar plant, but with the power of the crowd, you get access to clean, affordable energy. Mm-hmm. And you're doing something for your community, you're doing something for your environment. And it's like this beautiful win-win situation where somebody could be sitting in rainy Denmark. They don't have access to their own roof, but they are keen to reduce the carbon footprint that they make, for example, on the travel, the commute that they make to work, or in various ways and shapes. And so they get an opportunity to reduce their carbon footprint, but also earn at the same time. So you know, the electricity that is generated is distributed. There are bills involved, and then the energy off-taker, the school, we have supermarkets and all sorts of different organizations. They get access to clean energy at a lower cost. Wow. And they're also demonstrating that they're not just about profit. They're trying to do something that's creating better clean air around in their area.
It sounds, there's a quote in The Wizard of Oz that I believe it's the wizard. He gives Dorothy a task, but the phrase "a good deed doer," and it sounds like the team of Sun Exchange are true good deed doers.
Yeah, and we'd be nothing without our community. So it's testament to the demand that there is for this kind of construct. And if you look out in the world, there are many organizations that are set up for nonprofit, that are charitable, that allow you to donate and do good. Mm-hmm. There aren't so many that allow you to also do something the way you can earn or put your money to good use as well. So that combination of being able to do that, earn something, so you feel like you're being responsible, but at the same time you can make a positive impact. So and there aren't a lot of organizations set up to do this. So we've definitely seen, we had our best year ever last year. Our first 2 months of the year have again kind of snowballed. There's definitely demand for people doing something more meaningful with their money. Our community is very vocal. Referral and word of mouth is very powerful for us, and it's obviously very authentic. But it's wonderful. And the other element of our platform is that you can. We have 178 countries involved.
Wow,
which is a lot of countries.
That is a lot of countries.
Yeah, and a lot of different currencies. But one way that you can get involved in is you can buy with Bitcoin, and you can also earn with Bitcoin, and that's become another means of decentralizing and getting involved and making stuff more accessible.
I was just going to say, you're really making it more accessible to pretty much, every kind of segment of potential person who would use. And I think that's really special. But with that, I'm here. Okay, so you have this kind of moral obligation, right? You're doing good deeds and good things. You're leading an organization, which, at the end of the day is an organization, and you need to keep it running. What keeps you up at night? There must be a lot of things, but what keeps you up at night professionally in this role and in this field?
So, it's a great question. And I think you'll automatically go to all the negative things that keep you awake, all the things that you worry about. But there are some things that fascinate me that also keep me awake, because I'm excited about what those opportunities are. So there's good stuff and bad stuff.
Let's get into it. Yeah, let's talk about
it. So, and I think I might speak for other CMO folk might relate to this, but I think there's a constant challenge of, doing and telling. So, one of the hard truths, I think in marketing in general, is that you need to do lots of things, try lots of things, get the right mix. And you stress about getting the right mix. But it's also about unpacking the value of that to all of the stakeholders that are involved, and not undervaluing the time that it takes to do that. So that, the value that you're creating is properly understood by all the stakeholders, whether it's investor relations, whether it's just board member confidence, did you take them on a journey with you? And that might not be the first thing that you'd think is the thing that sort of stresses you or keeps you awake at night, but it's trying to get that balance so that they have the macro view and all the people that are supporting the macro view, and knowing when to share some nuggets, what's going on under the hood. Because you kind of need that support too, because then the other thing that keeps you awake at night is balancing lots of things. So
and people look to you as a leader. I mean, it's not like you're just kind of the scale. You actually are leading. So that, I think that adds.
Yeah, and leading me very squarely to the next point, which is that balancing of making decisions all the time that have short and long-term impact. So, it's balancing things like short-term sales tactics with creative problem solving, with long-term strategic thinking that builds a brand. So it's like constantly trying to get that mix right. So it's not just looking at your channel mix, understanding the segments in your audiences. It's really understanding that you're doing things in parallel all the time, stirring pots, balancing plates, and what kind of other analogies. But you're trying to, and I think, we talked a little bit before this interview kicked off, Jen, about, something that I find very useful. And this is maybe a thing I've learned, is to easy to not easy to say, to compartmentalize.
There you go.
To try and break stuff down and think about what you do daily versus weekly versus monthly. What do you do quarterly? And then try and package it so that you can give it some time and attention and then move on. So I try and keep, especially because I have a team that supports me, I try and keep the daily stuff to an absolute minimum to make sure that I'm supporting the team correctly, but I don't get too involved in like the daily things that need to happen, because I've got other people responsible and concerned and addressing those kind of things. And then the type of things, weekly, what do I do on a weekly basis? And then I just do it at that time, and then I move on. And the monthly and the quarterly stuff is the more strategic thinking and looking at bigger picture things, trying to look at opportunities across different departments. And I don't just work in marketing. I look at product. Mm-hmm. I work with the exec team. So we're problem solving at that level too, but you compartmentalize and you don't go crazy. You try and time box things. It really helps. And I think the other thing that has the potential to keep me awake at night is supporting my team correctly. Particularly as we've all had radical shifts in how we work. So, am I managing the team in the right way? And of course, there's no right way. Every business has different requirements. Every team deserves, like a custom setup. And then every individual is different. So, my responsibility is to serve my team and balance that with the business needs. So, am I empowering everybody so that they can do the best possible job on hand? Am I supporting them in their career in the longer term?
I think.
But am I? Yeah.
We spoke. Every time we've spoken, that radiates from every conversation that we've had, and I think as a leader, what really I have learned from listening to you is how much you do support your team. And one thing I want to ask, because I get this question a lot, is what makes a great brand? And usually where my conversation will go with someone is that, well, people make a great brand. And because behind every brand there are people, and you need to know how to drive people forward and inspire them, because the people are important. And like I said, every time we've spoken, it radiates from you how much you value your people. How can you share with us a little bit about how do you motivate or support or protect your team in today's ever-changing workforce with so many new shifts and changes. And also startup, right? That's also a different monster of its own, with finding the right talent and maintaining the right talent and keeping everybody moving forward. Can you share a little bit of how your secret sauce, if you will?
Yeah, and again, it's another balancing act, because you want to provide a broad enough framework, strategic framework, so that everybody feels guided and supported, so they're not adrift. But you don't want to micromanage either. So there's a balancing act. You don't want somebody to feel out of their depth, that there's some light scaffolding in place, or if they need it, they know that they can pull in and not feel that they're not doing a great job just because they're asking for help. So it's not easy. None of this stuff is easy. But I think that the one of the critical things is that you trust your team. They wouldn't be in your team. They wouldn't have been selected. They wouldn't have joined your organization. They got through, whatever, tests and
the copious rounds of interview.
Yeah. And once you're in, you're trusted by default. That's really important. It's really important to build confidence in the ability to make decisions independently and as a team, and know when to pull in and when to consult and get advice, when to know that you need to get support, and to create that safe space where you can be completely your own self. And to be, this sounds a bit chihuahua, but to be completely vulnerable. But it's not. It's just to be sort of honest with yourself and honest with the teammates that are there for you. And I think, to your point, Jen, the thing about brands are built by people is so true. And it's about people buying into that brand promise and then living it and really being invested in, how can I best demonstrate that, and how can the brand best turn up, and what do I do in my area? So you might be responsible for a certain segment of customers, or you might be responsible for a certain set of activities. It's really understanding that brand promise and the business's vision and mission. So you create this like perfect scenario where your career is developing in the way that you can see that there's progress, you can see what path you're on, but you're also absolutely contributing on a daily, weekly, monthly basis to the vision. So it's really important to build tangible rewards back to the team, and to celebrate the things that you've learned and the things that you've achieved as a team. Communication is really, really important, both within the team and externally as well, sort of profiling what the team has done.
Is Sun Exchange hiring? I mean, I think everyone listening wants to join. Are you hiring?
Yeah, so that's another challenge. So you, in growing your team, and we're scaling fast, you try and recruit in the right way, so that the right people are coming in to support the people that have got the experience, balancing career development with new people that are joining, and doing onboarding correctly. And there's a balancing, and the designing of your team, so that you make sure that you play to your strengths right now, but you also play to the potential strengths of your team, if that makes sense. So you have to have a very clear idea of what everybody's career paths are, so that you can support that. I want the team that I work with to feel like they can blossom and be nourished here in the long term, so that they don't feel like, this is just a 2-year career path, and then Sun Exchange will have done everything it can for me. I have to find new challenges. There's so many different potential angles and challenges and growth areas within Sun Exchange. It's trying to work out that perfect growth pattern.
Yeah, totally. And I hear that, and I can radically share with you at Oktopost, we have these same conversations. And it's exciting, and also it's that balancing act you spoke of. So when I think about the employees of Sun Exchange, and maybe some are even listening, what do you love most about your team and your employees and the people that make up the AllStars of Sun Exchange?
So, I mean, I've worked in many places. I've seen many dynamics through the client service work I've done, and I've had access to lots of different team cultures. And you're obviously biased because you're pretty proud of your team, and lots of all-stars in my team and the wider team. And then if I try and crystallize what it is that you mentioned, all-stars, what kind of makes an all-star Sun Exchanger, it's the ability as a whole, that there's fantastic diversity of thinking. Mm-hmm. So what we try and do is not think in silos or think in expected ways. Our whole business model challenges the status quo. So maybe we attract people who like to think in new ways, people that like to challenge the status quo. And that might be a different way of doing business or a different way of completing a task and not being bound by what's been done historically or previously. Mm-hmm. And I think naturally, trying to just synthesize some of the characteristics of the team, the wider team, very, very resourceful, not really fazed by what could be potential barriers. Like, well, how do we solve this as a team? And then I think one of the other elements is there's a positivity, there's a lust for life. And everybody is not just bound by what they do at their laptop or their phone. They walk, they surf, their life is quite balanced, and that's very much encouraged. We live in a beautiful part of the world, and kind of a hybrid of a remote and an office setup across Southern Africa and the globe, with people outside South Africa too. But I think that also connects us, talking about what we do outside work and sometimes meeting up and doing that together. For example, we're all cooking together next week. It's quite exciting.
Oh, what are you cooking?
Actually, everybody's traveling.
Okay.
Everybody's traveling to Cape Town to do what they call a food jam, where we get together and we learn new cooking techniques. But it's a fun activity. I've done it a couple of times before, and it's super cool. And the jam part is that there's music playing, and you get to jam. And then you all get to eat a meal afterwards. So it's great fun. It's great fun. And then I think just the final thing on our people is that we have, and it was very powerful because it was one of the first things I was exposed to in my engagement with Sun Exchange, is a core set of values that aren't just on a poster on a wall. They are lived and they are used to make decisions. So it's not just these are our values. You learn them in your induction. I regularly pull them out to go, okay, whether it's having fun, whether it's being cautiously optimistic and confident about what we do, but it all ladders up to being, daring to be great. And we regularly kind of celebrate that because we have to be bold. We're in kind of uncharted territories for a lot of the things we do. So
I love that. Daring to be great. I think that's definitely something I'm going to take away from this interview with you and remind myself daily to dare to be great. With that, I have two more questions for you. And this has just been really eye-opening for me to listen to somebody who really you can feel, loves their team, values the people. And I think it helps take the organization such a long way when the employees feel this. But what I'm wondering, 2020 for everyone has been a whirlwind. In 2021, maybe it's getting a little better here and there, but I think many of us still do feel the rut that is continuing and where is the world going? And what I'm curious to know is there anything that you have learned, let's say at the start of the pandemic, or let me rephrase that, anything that you wished you had known at the start of the pandemic that you know now that may have impacted the way that you think or the decisions that you've made based off of what you now know, that the world is okay, or, the change has come or shifted. And let me know if I need to rephrase that question, but does that make sense?
Yeah. And I think it's so interesting because I've been asked this quite a lot, what would you do differently if you'd known what was going to happen? And I don't think marketing has changed. And we were talking a little bit earlier about the changing technologies and the shifts in, people gravitate towards this and then they gravitate to that. And
I think Clubhouse is like the latest, like gravitating, like
absolutely, right? Absolutely. And now we're all kind of jumped in with both feet to go and experiment, but and in the understanding that it's an experiment. That Twitter's also brought out a competitor. So
I saw that. Yeah,
we're keeping an eye out there because we have a lot of Android-based users, and we don't know when Clubhouse is going to go Android, and we don't like being exclusive. We like being inclusive. So. And I think, Clubhouse has happened, and I think it's been super successful and maybe helped by the pandemic. People want to connect. They're crazy remote and craving intimacy, and deeper connection. So I think it's been a perfect storm for Clubhouse in that respect. But, I don't, you play your cards as you find them, and you look at opportunities. And I think if you are insight driven and you understand that people are people, whether you're in business to business, whether you're selling fashion, clothes online, or services that are professional, people still have human responses to things. And I don't think I would have played anything any differently, actually. So I think I have the good fortune of having some frameworks and experience to know how to navigate kind of uncharted territory. And it's always balancing that gut instinct, which is very based on experience. People undervalue gut, but it does come from a place of experience, to also trying to be objective about, okay, so these are the set of facts in front of me right now. How best do I do that I can play to the short-term opportunities and also understand the long-term impact of my decisions. And I think, I look at what Sun Exchange has achieved in the last 12 months. It could have radically achieved more potentially if it hadn't had the pandemic. But I actually think maybe, we feel very much as a business that the time is now for us, so that there's even greater demand for what we're doing. We're very grateful for that. I think in many ways the pandemic is working as a catalyst for our business. But I think as you come in, and this isn't really a pandemic related question, this is more of a startup growing up and scaling point, that as you come in, you feel very responsible. You feel you are the custodian of that, because you lead marketing, and to a certain extent that it informs and dictates growth. But what you want to do is nurture what has got you this far and value it and acknowledge it. But then also be open to understanding that there are new opportunities that complement that. And it's, again, kind of not devaluing what has got the business to where it, what's in that DNA. One of the valuable things for us, which was, some great intuitive decisions have been made, but really valuing the community that had got us there. We literally would be nowhere if the community hadn't supported us, if people hadn't got excited by the idea and paid in and bought leases and enabled those first projects to happen. And those projects now, each project happens, it goes onto the platform, and we might get 100 buyers, we might get 1,000 buyers, they all jump in. And then there's this big countdown, and it's like a rush to finish. And it's exciting.
It's the thrill, yeah.
People want to buy, and they buy into one project, and then they take those earnings and then they buy into another project, and you get this beautiful compound story where their earnings are going up and up. But it's really valuing that and nurturing it, and being fantastically appreciative of the decisions that were made at the start, and the communities that supported us from the get-go. So we even engaged the community and asked them for their opinion in what we're doing as well. It's almost, I think you talk a little bit about, Oktopost talks a little bit about employee advocacy.
Yes.
And the power of that. And we feel like our community is, it's almost indistinguishable. If you buy into our values and our mission is shared by our wider community.
Absolutely. And, I hope everyone listening, I think we're all going to go to the Sun Exchange LinkedIn, give you a follow. I mean, this is fascinating stuff. My last question for you is a little bit more lighthearted. We're going to step away from marketing, but so you can breathe a little bit. But I'm so curious, right? In today's world, we were talking about it. You really can go online and find out so much about a person before even speaking to them, and admire a person without even knowing, or having that conversation. So what I was hoping you could share with us today on the Radically Transparent podcast is something that anyone listening might not be able to find about you on your LinkedIn profile or any of the other podcasts or blogs. When you Google your name, you have an amazing background. I mean, just reading about you, I was enthused to have this interview. But what's something you can share that's not on your LinkedIn profile?
Okay, so And maybe this. So yeah. You can't reveal everything on your LinkedIn. Neither would you want to.
Right. Nor should you.
I can tell you a fun fact about me, but I think it's probably. I mean, keep it in the workspace. I think maybe as a diversity of portfolio, there are a few categories and industries I haven't worked in.
Okay.
But some of the campaigns, so that's just like there's a diversity of the different sectors and what they share and what is different about them, what are their different audiences. But like some of the campaigns have just been crazy. So big, enormous campaigns cancelled for various reasons, good and bad. A crazy idea that never saw the light of day, but we were working on a brand that focused on flow and what helped flow. This product could help you concentrate and work in flow. And we interviewed it was for a podcast, the early days of podcasting, a sword swallower. And
for those who can't see my face, my jaw just hit the ground. What? A sword swallower? Like someone who swallows swords? Like
and lives to tell the tale. And he's made a career out of it. So we interviewed him audio only. So imagine this is happening on Clubhouse, but it's recorded for
live.
For live. And he demonstrates how he does it, and it's all as you hear it. And it was really just about how he had to focus very carefully to get these enormously long swords down his throat and out again, and how he had to find flow. Like very centered.
Like sweating.
But the sound of the sword going down the throat.
And you would hear it.
I will never, ever, ever forget. And maybe I've just given that to you, Jen. So you can maybe imagine that in your darkest, that might keep you awake.
The rest of my days now, when I'm writing my social posts, I'm going to hear the flow of swords in his throat. Thank you.
And he literally talked about his technique all the way as he was swallowing the sword. And something I'll never forget. And we couldn't use the content because it's not graphic. I don't know what the word for graphic is when it's just it's aural. But it was a great idea, and it demonstrated the product absolutely perfectly. But it was just slightly too, oh God, terrible pun alert. Don't write this one down. It was very edgy. That was so. And there've been a lot of those kind of things where the idea's been correct, but we couldn't use it. It was just too out there.
What I love though is the boldness. The boldness of the ideas. You went with it. And
the client was up for it. It was just that once it had been produced, it was a bold client. Once it had been produced, we had lots of content. We produced lots of content for social media. That was one that never actually got launched.
What it sounds like is we're going to have to do a podcast episode part 2 with just these stories, because I think these alone.
They're loads. Absolutely
we might have to call you back, I think. Right? But with that, I'm going to conclude our episode. It's been fantastic. What I do want to know, and I know, where can we find out more about Sun Exchange, or if we're interested in the solar panels or exploring more, how can we be in touch with you? What's the best place to connect?
So our website really unpacks what the platform is, how it works, what the current opportunities are. There's a large farm in Zimbabwe that's being solar powered by our community soon. It's nearly sold, so you'd have to move fast on that one. But you could go check out a project. You can see the different projects we've been involved in, from everything from different charities and wildlife parks to schools and retirement homes. Just thesunexchange.com.
Okay.
And then all major social media platforms, from LinkedIn to Twitter to Telegram to Instagram. Interesting from a social media point of view. Depends, whether you're interested in the B2B side or rather the more fun kind of engaged consumer space. There's a lot of tech talk in the Telegram channel, so a lot of Bitcoin mavens there. We have different social hubs. You can contact us directly. We have a great community champion, Barrett, who is a source of lots of knowledge. So if you just wanted to have a chat, you can reach out to us.
Fantastic. We will. Kathryn, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks, Jen. That's great. So thank you very much for the interview. It was like great questions. Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in to the Radically Transparent podcast brought to you by Oktopost, the only social media management and employee advocacy platform architected for B2B. I'm Jennifer Gutman, your host and director of social strategy here at Oktopost. And if you love today's show, we'd love if you subscribe, rate, and give a raving review wherever you get your podcasts. For more discussion on B2B social media marketing, be sure to follow Oktopost on LinkedIn. And of course, to gain access to all our free social media marketing and employee advocacy resources, head on over to our website, www.oktopost.com. Until next time.